Okay, I just always have to start off with this. The music Hay House does is like really like, do you feel like you're about to like watch a really good movie? I get like emotional with it. So thank you, Hay House, for that awesome music. And I'm really excited to be here with everyone. So, and I popped on a few minutes early and I love seeing where you all are from. So keep putting it in the chat. And this is like a step back in time for me. So I am so happy to be here with you all. We are streaming this across many of our platforms, and I'll give you a little background on how we started doing group fasts that really changed so many lives. So I want to start with that journey with you all, and then really today, we're going to dive into what you need to know to succeed at this fast. We're going to dive into dopamine, one of my favorite neurotransmitters. I am definitely a dopamine addicted human. And so I've learned a lot about my relationship with dopamine. So we're going to talk about that. And just excited to be here with you all. So let me start with this. No matter where you are, if you're watching this on the webinar, you're watching this on my YouTube channel, or you're watching this after the recording, when I first started understanding the principles of fasting, I really started with the idea of autophagy. And it was Dr. Yoshinori Osumi was the Japanese scientist that won the Nobel Prize in medicine and physiology for a term called autophagy. And he won that prize in about 2015, 2016 time period. And basically, it was his work that dramatically changed the way that we looked at what happens to the body when it's in a fasted state. And he brought to the world this concept of autophagy. And when I started looking at his research was really built around this fundamental idea that when you go into a fasted state, the body becomes stronger. This is crazy because this is not the way we have ever thought of food. I mean, countless people I've sat with that have said, well, aren't I going to be feeling worse when I go into the fasted state? Like, won't I die? Like, there's so many things that go on in our brain about what happens if we don't have food. And Dr. Osumi won the Nobel Prize in medicine and physiology for this incredible concept that the body basically heals itself in a fasted state. And the reason I say basically is because what we said in those early days is the body detoxed in a fasted state. But what he was saying is that in the absence of glucose coming up and nutrients coming in, there was a trigger inside the cell that got initiated where this inner workings of the cell, you have to remember that every cell in your body is built with intelligence. It's not just a random cell. It's like out there floating in the ether. Each cell comes pre-programmed with the most intelligent, greatest intelligence that even all the medical doctors and all the researchers, all the doctors in the world have not been able to replicate. That's how wise your cells are. And so in the fasted state, and when you trigger autophagy, the inner workings of the cell said, hey, there's some things that are dysfunctional in this cell that are weighing us down. We need to get rid of them. There are some bacteria and viruses in the cell that are going to destroy the cell. We need to get rid of them. And that started at 17 hours of fasting. At the same time, we had this incredible fasting giant named Walter Longo. And Walter Longo had been doing decades of research on fasting out of the University of Southern California. And he looked at the 3-day water fast. He said one of the problems that he saw with people going through traditional cancer treatment is it decimated their immune systems. And so what he decided to do was, what if we could put somebody in a fasted state through the chemotherapy process? Could they come out of that process and have a stronger immune system? Could fasting be a tool for that kind of reaction in a body that came out of chemotherapy completely wiped out? And what he learned in his 72-hour experiment was that at 72 hours, the whole immune system rebooted itself. And the intelligence inside the body decided that it needed to get rid of the white blood cells that no longer were efficient. And it needed to create a resurgence of healthy white blood cells. And it did that by making a massive, pouring into the body a massive amount of stem cells. And these stem cells went throughout the body and started to repair. And one of the things it repaired was the white blood cell. And he figured out that if you put someone going into chemotherapy, if you put them into a 72-hour fast, they actually came out of chemotherapy stronger than ever. So it didn't decimate them. They actually got the benefit of the chemotherapy plus the benefit of the human body to reset and reorganize itself in the absence of food. So I had 10 years ago, I had these two studies in my mind. And I was like, well, there's got to be something in between this. What's in between 17 and 72 hours? There has to be something. What else is the body doing? And then I found a study out by University of MIT, the famous institute, MIT, put out a study showing that in mice, that at 24 hours without food, that the whole gut microbiome reset itself, and that the intestinal stem cells that are stem cells that repair the gut lining, change the terrain in there to make it more favorable for the microbiome, they reinvigorated, much like the white blood cells at 72 hours, they reinvigorated themselves at a 24-hour fast. You could totally reset your microbiome. And those of you that are in my Reset Academy, I've been sharing this with you. Like, I literally had a practice full of gut-issued people with gut dysbiosis, and the solution I had for them at that time was supplementation. And when I found this 24-hour fast, I was like, wait, the body will do this on its own? Let me see if I can put these people into a 24-hour fast and then reintroduce food and see if we could actually change the microbiome and their gut situation without using supplementation. Because honestly, the name of the game is not to be relying on supplementation. The name of the health game is not to be relying on medication. The name of the health game is to use the most amazing healing power that was ever created, called the human body, and access it first before you go into the outside, what we call exogenous sources. So I had these three markers. I had 17 hours, I had 24 hours, and I had 72 hours. This made me highly curious about what else could potentially be out there, that what other triggers, I called them switches, got turned on as you fasted. And so I dove into the research, and I found what could potentially be one of my favorite studies on fasting. And I put it in the book. You can, those of you that are science hounds, you can go look it up, and it's in Science Daily. And it was a study done in 2007, so it's a fairly old study. It was done on obese rats. And this is what the study found, that genetically obese rats had lower levels of dopamine receptor sites than lean rats. And so when you restricted food in these obese rats, what they saw was that you actually created more dopamine receptor sites. So my brain was like, oh my God, wait a second. We can reset the dopamine system by using fasting as a tool. My brain was also like, oh my God, why would an obese rat have less receptor sites than a lean rat? Now, you'll notice they said genetically. I still am not convinced it's genes that I mean, I know we have an obesity gene, but it's gone now. The obesity issue is way beyond the genetics. It's quality of food. It's, I mean, everything I've taught you guys. But what I did is I was like, okay, well, let me unpack that. So this is really important to the fast you're about to do over the next couple of days. When you put food, your favorite food, let's just use your favorite food. One of the things we know about food is it creates a dopamine response in the body. And the food industry knows this. This is why we have a food addicted culture, because they are spraying chemicals, they are infusing chemicals into food to make you addicted. And in that, what's happening is that you're getting dopamine saturated. And this dopamine saturation is making it so you don't get the same joy out of food. Now, I haven't been able to find the study that shows that that toxic food creates dopamine resistance, much like toxic food creates insulin resistance. I do not believe there's such a thing as dopamine resistance. I believe there's such a thing as dopamine saturation. And we are living in a moment where we have dopamine saturation. And that saturation is creating an insensitivity in these dopamine receptor sites. So let's put this in context of like a day in your life or a day in the life of somebody eating toxic food. When you see your favorite food, let's say it's a bag of Doritos, and you're at the market and you look at that bag of Doritos and your brain goes, yes, I would like that, please. What happens is that you're getting a dopamine hit right there in the market. You looking at your favorite food, you haven't even put it in your mouth, but you know what it's going to taste like. You know what it's going to feel like. You're getting a rush of dopamine. Then you go home and you pull out all the groceries and you open up the bag of Doritos. You haven't put it in your mouth. You can smell the Doritos now. Pulling it out of the bag, opening it up, getting the smell, you're getting another influx of dopamine, and it hasn't even gone in your body yet. Then it hits your taste sensors in your tongue. And this is a really fun thing because my son is becoming a chef and he and I have been geeking out on the taste receptors in the tongue. The taste receptors in the tongue, when you get that umami, is a really popular flavor right now. In fact, Chef Jeff, one of the chefs for Eat Like a Girl, I spent some time with him this week and he was telling me all the ways that the culinary world tries to access these umami receptors in your mouth to create this incredible experience in your brain so the food tastes good, but what you're experiencing is you're getting dopamine even from natural ways. So you open up this bag of Doritos, you've now had like 3 or 4 dopamine hits, you put it in your mouth and your brain is like, that is good. Now here's the problem with dopamine. Dopamine is the molecule of more. It is not the molecule of enough. And the food industry knows this. So you never, ever can. I mean, how many people have found themselves halfway through a bag of Doritos and they can't, it's never like, oh, I got to stop. It's like, I got to do this more because it's hitting all of those receptors in your brain that are telling you, give me more, give me more, give me more. Then let's say you decide halfway through the bag of Doritos, you're like, yeah, okay, I better calm down now. And you go and you put the bag of Doritos away. And then you go along your day and you pick this thing up. And you go to socials and you go to the dings and all the things. This is a dopamine producing piece of equipment. How many of you have freaked out when you can't find your phone? How many of you can't put this down and walk away from it? Put it in the chat. This is a non-stop dopamine hit. So we have food that is dopamine. We have a phone that is dopamine. And then, yeah, come on, I can't be the only one. Put it in the chat. How many people are addicted to their phones? I'm one of them, right there, one of them. I really consciously try to, put my phone down so that I can give that dopamine response a little break. Now, let's think about this in terms of food. So now, all of a sudden, we are on the couch binge watching our favorite Netflix series. Now, we don't have to wait. Remember when we used to watch an episode and then we would wait a whole week for that episode to come out? We don't do that anymore. We're like, what am I going to binge watch? I binge watched The Crown this summer and it was 5-6 hours went by and I was fully immersed in the life of Princess Diana. I didn't have to wait. There was no in between. It was massive, massive dopamine. I couldn't pull myself away from it. So we are dopamine addicted from TV. And then I can sit on the couch and I can pick up my dopamine machine and I can go to an app and I can have food delivered to my front door. And all I've got to do is get up off the couch and go and grab that food. And I can sit back down and I can watch my Netflix series. When you start looking through the eyes of dopamine, you realize all of us are incredibly dopamine addicted. And the only way to make dopamine sensitive to yourself again is to get out of the addiction and to block out any source of dopamine. It's torturous. And at the time in which I found this study on obese people having less dopamine receptor sites, I think if this study was done in this day and age, it would be the obese people have so saturated their dopamine centers that they're not sensitive to dopamine anymore. And what that means when it comes to food is that 3 chips of Doritos may have given you a dopamine hit, but the more you eat the Doritos, now you need half the bag to give you that same dopamine hit. And then once you're doing half the bag, now you need the full bag. This goes for everything in our life. So all of a sudden there became this trend a few years ago, this is probably about 8 years ago, where everybody was dopamine fasting. And what I mean by that is not avoiding food. They would go 24 hours without any sensory come in. I recently, oh my God, I heard of this crazy thing that people are doing on flights. And it's, I can't even imagine doing this, where they are sitting, they have a name for it. It's raw something. They're sitting on a long flight without any sensory input. They're not watching. Yeah, raw dogging. Thank you. raw dogging. They're sitting in a seat and all they're doing the whole plane flight, they're not eating, they're not drinking, they're not listening to anything. They're sitting and staring at the map that's showing where the plane is going. Like, that sounds torturous to me. But I think the reason somebody said that's what they do. Amazing. I think the reason that they're doing this is because it's a beautiful dopamine reset. So when they get to their location, their dopamine system has mellowed out and rebalanced and they get joy again. So when I looked at this idea, when I looked at this article on resetting these dopamine receptor sites, I was like, okay, so how do we use food if I've got 17 hours that stimulates autophagy and I've got 72 hours that reboots the immune system? Could I reboot the dopamine system by taking people through a 48-hour water fast? And during that time, we would do something called Fast Training Week. We still do it. If you're not familiar with it, make sure you sign up for my email list because we do them every month and we practice different resets together, different fasts together. So I went to my community during that time and I was like, okay, community. And my community at that time was my YouTube community. It was my Resetter Collaborative on Facebook. And those of you, give me a shout out if you're in my Reset Academy. It was the thousands of women in my Reset Academy. And I love my Reset Academy. So if you want more of an experience with this information, please join it with me. And I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. Hi, Kelly, I see you. I don't know if this is going to work for mental health, but could we all try a 48-hour fast together? It was like an incubator. And this is what I'm seeing. So we did. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people experimented with me. And it blew me away because what people reported back was that the weeks after they did the 48-hour fast, not only did food become pleasurable again, but everything in their life became pleasurable again because we had reset the dopamine system. Think about that. Like, how many of us, like, have something exciting go on in our life? Oh, you know where this is a really good idea is somebody posted, I don't know who it was, that the people who won the gold medal at the Olympics have a harder time reintegrating into their life than the people who won silver and bronze. The people who won silver and bronze were just like grateful they won a medal. But the people who won the gold had to come back to a life that was so boring. I've worked with a lot of celebrities. I've worked with a lot of musical artists, LeAnn Rimes being the one who wrote the foreword for Fast Like a Girl. And one of the first things we had to frickin' do with that beautiful woman was reset her dopamine system because she has been on stage since she was 15 years old. Her dopamine system was really, really saturated. And she would come home from a Saturday night show and be so depressed on Sunday. And it had nothing to do with her life. It had to do with her dopamine saturation. So when you start to look through the eyes of dopamine, you really want to use dopamine as a way of pulling you to something, but you don't want to oversaturate it. The name of the game is to it's a hard thing, which is why the 48-hour fast is incredible, because it's a moment to reset yourself. Yes, thank you, Stacy, for my Fast Like a Girl certified coaches. Put it in there. Thanks for calling yourself out. So what this fast is that you're about to embark upon is bigger than weight loss. It is bigger. It's bigger than just surviving a fast. Thank you, coaches. I adore you. Thank you. So it is about bringing you happiness again. And when it gets difficult over the next two days, I want you to realize that that's what's resetting. I want you to enjoy the little things in life. I want you to be able to look at a sunset and cry. I want you to taste a piece of food. And those of you, by the way, that bought Eat Like a Girl, the recipes in here are insane. I want, when this gets to your door on October 22nd, I want you to take these recipes and make them and experience the amazing chefs that put these recipes together for you. I want you to have the true experience with food that you deserve. Now, I share this story all the time because this was one of the most life-changing stories of my career. And it was a man named Todd who came to me and said he was massively overweight. And he said, I need your help. I need to lose weight. And I could see he was massively overweight. And I asked him a series of questions. But one of the questions I asked him was, what do you think holds you back from losing weight? And he's like, well, that's easy. I'm food addicted. Just if you, in full transparency, wherever I show up, I want to create a safe space for people. If you feel moved to put in the chat, if you feel like you're food addicted. I personally was somebody who was food addicted. So there is no judgment from me. There's no judgment from the community. This is a loving environment. Thank you. Thank you for your honesty. And so Todd says to me, I'm food addicted. I'm drinking 12 sodas a day. Why is he drinking 12? He's drinking 12 because one started to give him a hit and then it didn't give him a hit. So then he had to go to 2 and then he had to go to 3 and then he had to go to 4. He kept going until he got to 12 in a day. Now it would have made sense. Thank you. I really appreciate all of you that are being really honest. I think one of the things about healing is you have to sort of assess where you're at. So I just appreciate that. So it would make sense. This man standing before me is massively overweight and drinking 12 sodas. It would make sense that I would say, well, Todd, just give up your soda and everything's going to go away. You're going to lose weight. But that would have been torture for him. That would have been torture. So, and he might have had some detox reactions, like I don't know where we would have gone. And he told me he had tried everything else. So put in the chat if you're like, I've tried diet after diet after diet and nothing has worked for me. You can just put, yep, that's me. I can't tell you how many people I've sat with that are like, don't put me on another diet. I can't do it. I can't do it. Because it's not willpower you need. You don't need willpower. You need to reset this dopamine system so that your experience with food is massively different. So I say to Todd, how about we do this? We're just going to take all this dopamine-rich food that your brain is highly addicted to, and we're just going to eat it all in a 16-hour eating window, leaving an 8-hour eating window, leaving 16 hours for fasting. So we just slowly pushed his breakfast back. And just like I spent the first month with him, not changing one single thing that he did. I just pushed it back and pushed it back. And at the end of the month, he was in about a 16-hour fasting window, 8-hour eating window. If that's new to you, I just want to remind you that that's what I introduced to you in Fast Like a Girl, which is we need a fasting window and an eating window. And I taught you all about the fasting window and I introduced the eating window. Now you have a whole book for the eating window coming to you in October. So if you let me know if you've pre-ordered it, put it in the chat. If you haven't, now we get to have this conversation about the eating window. So I say to on the first month, thank you. Those of you who pre-order it, thank you. I can't wait for your feedback and to get it back. I mean, this is like baby number one and baby number two. Like I feel like they're my children, and I'm so excited. I'm as proud of them as I am proud of my own children. So, but with Todd, that first month, all we did is get him to have a little break from his food, and he lost 13 pounds. 13 pounds in the first month, drinking 12 sodas a day and eating buffalo wings and fries and drinking beer with the boys after work. 13 pounds he lost. It's crazy doing that. So the next month, I'm like, okay, I've got to start to get him to this 48-hour fast, because once I get him to the 48-hour fast, he's going to start to change his experience with food. So my first step after that was get him to the 24-hour fast, because if I could get him to the 24-hour fast, he can reset his whole microbiome in his gut. And now the microbes in his gut are not telling him what he should eat. So the second month, we threw in a 24-hour fast, just one. So I saw some people put in here that they're sugar addicted. If you are sugar or carb addicted, your 24-hour fast starts to change the microbiome of your gut so that you're not craving those foods as much. There are bacteria and fungus that live in the gut that make you crave food. This is why guilting and shaming yourself for not being able to stick to your diet is ridiculous. Please don't do this. I keep saying this over and over. Like, it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. But how you got here, whatever food addiction path took you here, quite possibly could have been the hijacking of your taste buds and your dopamine system by the food industry and everything that goes with the phone and social media and all the apps. Your dopamine system was hijacked and your microbiome system was hijacked. And you're trying to muscle your way through weight loss. And it doesn't make sense because two of these major systems got hijacked. So with Todd, the second month, I added in some protein, I added in some fat to stabilize his blood sugar, and I had him start doing a 24-hour fast so that the fungus and the bad bacteria that was giving him sugar cravings would die off. So the sugar cravings would go away. We played this game for like several months, and about month 4 and 5, I said to him, you're ready for a 48-hour fast. Let's go and do a 48-hour fast. Beautiful, man. And he's like, I'm whatever, he now has momentum. I was on a podcast this morning where the interviewer asked me, like, how do you stay motivated? I'm like, you don't need to stay motivated. You need momentum. You don't need motivation. You need momentum. When you have momentum with anything in your life, whether it's your health, your business, whatever, when you have momentum, you will be motivated. So I now had momentum and motivation with Todd, so he was ready for a 48-hour fast. And so we did the 48-hour fast. And I had at that point let him drink his sodas outside of his house. So inside his house, he was drinking Crystal Light, which still wasn't my favorite, but I'm like, okay, fine, Todd, drink that. And outside of his house, he could keep soda at his office and he could drink it when he goes to a restaurant, but he couldn't allow soda to be inside the house. After the 48-hour fast, he no longer wanted the soda. I kid you not. Now he wanted to get himself to that point, but the addiction had him so strong. When we reset his dopamine system, he could make that food change. That's the power of what you're about to go through. It literally is going to reset this system so that everything you're trying to achieve in your health and your life becomes easier. Now, when I first took these principles and we started doing it with the Fast Training Week, and we did it across all our platforms, it literally blew me away for months and months later, how many messages after that first 48-hour fast we got of people saying they were much healthier and happier since that fast. Something about that 48 hours really seemed to turn people mentally and physically. And that is the opportunity you have before you this week. So I love to create a big vision for what we're doing here together and how the power of a fast. It is way beyond a science article. It is way beyond weight loss. It is about resetting yourself and giving yourself a do-over, a start again. How many of us have come to this place in life where we have put toxic thoughts in our mind, we have eaten toxic food, we've hung out around toxic people, we have engaged in toxic behaviors, and we feel off course. I have definitely, put it, thank you, Kelly, put in there if you've got, I mean, again, when we call ourselves out, we give permission to call everybody else out. This is why you will always get the authentic version of me. You will never, ever get the plasticized version of me, because I will always share my journey from a place of authenticity, because then it gives you permission to share from yours. So thank you, everybody. We find ourselves in life at a spot that we go, I have gotten way off course. And no diet's going to get me back. No shiny object syndrome. Those of you in my academy know what shiny object syndrome is, where we start going, oh my God, a new friend shows up and is like, I went and got, did this biohack, or I got this thing at my house, or I went on this diet. And we're like, you look so good. Oh my God, what are you doing? And then we want to go do it. Like, I have a fun story on that. I'm spending a lot of my time in LA right now. And a friend of mine met me at my house, and she says to me, she shows up, and I'm like, oh my God, you look so good. What did you do? Like, your skin is gorgeous. She just turned 60. I'm like, your skin is gorgeous. Like, what have you been doing? And she said, oh, well, maybe it was the Hailey Bieber smoothie I just had at Air One, which has all this like hyaluronic acid in it. And we laughed about it. But even me in that moment was like, well, shit, I better go get a Hailey Bieber smoothie. Maybe the secret to beautiful skin is in the Hailey Bieber smoothie. Like, that's the freaking mindset our culture is stuck in. And I even caught myself, I laughed at her. I'm like, well, shoot, tomorrow we're going to get Hailey Bieber smoothies. But this is what we do all day long in our culture, is we start outsourcing our health and happiness, thinking it's going to be this thing. This is the one thing that's going to get me the result. The one thing doesn't live outside of you, it lives inside of you, and it's called innate intelligence. It is an inner working inside of you that is always working in its favor. And it's sitting there going, hey, what about me? You don't need the Hailey Bieber smoothie if you learn how to understand me. You don't need the diet. You don't need the weight loss drug. You don't need all of that if you understand me. I'm here to serve you. You just need to know how to play my game. And when it comes to dopamine, the game is you can reset it by going on a 48-hour fast. Now, I will offer an invitation to some of you over the next several days, if you would like to put your phone down or maybe contain it a little bit more. If you'd like to stop binge watching, don't binge watch a show. Like, look at all the addictions you have and see what you're willing to let go of. You may decide to add more dopamine fasting this week. Now, when you are in the next 48 hours, I want to remind you there are going to be tough moments. And our brain is so crafty, and it's so like seeking dopamine. This is what freaking Mark Zuckerberg knew when he created Facebook. Like, this is what the social media giants know, is that we have so little control over our dopamine system that the more dopamine I can get this person, the less you're going to get off my platform. You're going to stay on my platform. So I want to just call out the thoughts that you're going to have. just know right now, it will be difficult. There will be moments of difficulty. But you want that. You want that because you're like needing to reset the system. So all food is a state changer. So when you hit that moment where you're like, oh God, why did I sign up for this 48-hour fast? Why am I doing this? Why am I listening to this woman try to talk me into avoiding food for 48 hours? Like, and believe me, you'll start attacking me at some point in the 48 hours. I used to always do this with my patients. I'm like, yeah, usually it's about hour like 30 that my name comes into your head and you're like, well, what is she talking about? Does she really know what she's talking? That's how crafty your brain is. But when that moment happens, what I want you to say to yourself is two things. I want you to say, all I want is a state changer right now. All I want. I'm uncomfortable. I maybe want to lie down. I might have a headache. I just want a state changer. So I have a lot of state changers. I could listen to music. I could go out and walk in nature. I could call a friend. Those of you that are doing this with friends, hold each other accountable. In fact, grab a friend. It's not too late, and hold each other accountable for that moment that the dopamine system is like, go get something, go get it. You want food. I had two beautiful patients in my clinic that I'll never forget, held each other accountable on a 3-day water fast. And they created something where each day they had their version of a fasted snack. And they would call each other and FaceTime each other. And they would put in a cup of water some minerals. And they would be like, okay, we're having our snack. It's snack time. And by doing that and doing it together with a friend, they got through that difficult moment. They created oxytocin in that moment. And oxytocin, remember, calms all other hormones down. And then they would set another alarm, and like 4 hours later, they would have dinner together, and they would do what I taught them, which is put mineral water in wine glasses. And they would FaceTime each other, and they'd be like, okay, we're having dinner together. They learned how to overcome those moments by leaning into oxytocin and repatterning this desire to eat as just a desire to have a different emotional experience than the one you're having. So keep that in mind, because I don't want you to miss the miracle that's going to happen when you bring food back in. When you have a plan for those difficult, who's your oxytocin go to? Some of you who might be, alone, go to your animal, go to your pet. Those of you in my Reset Academy, go to the Academy site and start asking for help or talking to people or connecting with oxytocin. My flag certified coaches, you guys all know to go to Mighty Networks. If you aren't a part of my academy, join my academy and we can experience this together. But you lean into oxytocin. Oxytocin heals over and over and over again. The other place you get oxytocin is in hugs. So when I first started learning how to go into these longer fasts, my son was in high school, and I would come up to him all the time. I'd be like, I just need some oxytocin, and give him a hug. It was my way of getting a hug out of my teenage son. It was like it's a great excuse. Highly recommend it. I learned the power of petting my dog. I learned how important it was to call a friend. Oxytocin heals. So you can take these difficult moments by leaning into the community that, and you could go, those of you in the Resetter Collaborative on Facebook, go there. That's our free platform. But lean into oxytocin. You don't need dopamine in those moments. You need oxytocin. So look for all the ways you can get oxytocin: humming, singing, dancing, nature, connecting, sex. Like, find your oxytocin and get lots of it while your dopamine system reboots itself. Now, I want to talk about I'll talk a little bit about how we're going to do the fast, but before I go into that piece of it, I want to talk about the interchange between dopamine and estrogen, because I know we have a lot of women here, and men, if you're listening, I'm not leaving you out. This is an important one for women. Estrogen, we've talked about, has a girl gang, and her girl gang is dopamine, serotonin, acetylcholine, glutamate, BDNF, and oxytocin. She has 6 gals in her girl gang. And whenever estrogen shows up, those neurotransmitters come with it. It's what I call the neurochemical armor. It's like this neurochemical buffer system that we have inside of us whenever estrogen shows up. Now, it's specifically one form of estrogen called estradiol. And estradiol is what I call, in Eat Like a Girl, I went deeper into, so many of you had asked me about the personalities of hormones and how they work. So there's a whole chapter on the personalities of hormones if you want to understand this deeper. Because one of my hopes with this book was that we could get it to the younger generation and we could start to train the teenagers and the 20-year-olds how to eat healthy for their hormones. But when estradiol, what I call her in the book, is a diva. She is literally a diva. She deserves every bit of respect that we give Mariah Carey or Beyonce or Taylor Swift. The divas that we put up on a pedestal, that is estradiol in your body. She's a freaking rock star. And she came in the front half of your cycle, all the way through ovulation. And then in the back half of your cycle, just to make it simple, we build more progesterone. For my perimenopause and menopausal women, estradiol made her exit. If you are perimenopausal, she is slowly declining. She's like, peace out. I did my job. I caused some eggs to be released. A couple of those eggs may have given you some children. It's been really nice working for you. It's been a little bit exhausting. I'm going to make my exit. And she's going to take about 10 years after, like 40, it takes about 10 or 15 years for estradiol to start to exit. But when she exits, in some of us, not all of us, she can take her girl gang with her. And so now dopamine is exiting and now serotonin is exiting. And those are your 2 feel-good hormones. I'm going to come back to their dopamine and serotonin's connection in a moment. And acetylcholine and glutamate are exiting, which means that you can't hold on to information as well. And oxytocin is exiting, which means you don't just get that same desire to naturally connect. You got to go out and create more connection. And BDNF could exit. And BDNF is what is like brain fertilizer. It helps you hold on to new information. And all of these neurochemicals are starting to make a decline. And I'm calling this, in the new book that I'm writing, the Brain Remodel Project, and the neurochemical armor that comes down from 40 until your last period. There is this massive neurochemical shift that happens. And then there is a resurgence of a new version of you that comes on board. And my postmenopausal women on this line that are in their late 50s, 60s, 70s, tell us, how great is 60, 70, 80? It's like once the brain has made this shift, welcome to 60, baby. Amazing. Come on, let us know. We have to know there's hope. I'm only 54. I'm like 2 years into my postmenopausal years. Like, speak it to us. There is this next version of you. I love it. That comes online that is incredibly happy, because the amygdala, part of the brain that has been seeking fight or flight, shuts down, and you tap more into empathy. And you become a more empathetic human. And the Brain Remodel Project also turns you in. I love it. This is so great. It turns you into this happier version of you. But it's in the perimenopausal years where all these neurochemicals are changing that we start to get depression. We get anxiety. We lose memory. And so in that, many times we do all the dopamine rich habits even more because we feel sad. So let's eat more. I don't feel good because my neurochemical system's off. Let me go drink more. Alcohol, by the way, is a dopamine hit. So this kind of fast in the perimenopausal years is critical for keeping those dopamine receptor sites sensitive, because you may be getting less dopamine. So this is an incredible fast that you might want to do monthly. You might want to do quarterly so that you can keep resetting the system as your brain remodel project is happening, as your neurochemical armor is coming down, and you are moving into this incredible, happy, productive version of you in your postmenopausal years, the promise that all the postmenopausal women on the line are offering us. Once you understand that dopamine system and how it ties into estrogen, and you understand it as estradiol goes away, then you start to see yourself through a neurochemical lens. It's really the way we were designed. And you start to see that where you're going in the postmenopausal years is amazing. So how do we create less suffering through that process? And one of them is this dopamine reset at 48 hours. So I love this, the 77-year-old, I love that. Thank you, Virginia, rocks. Yes, thank you. So you're going through an experience over the next couple of days that's way bigger than weight loss. I really hope you understand this. This is why we chose the 48-hour fast. We chose it because we did a 3-day water fast in January. We had over 100,000 people join us. And I wanted you all to really dial in and understand the tool of a 48-hour fast. And I want to talk about the tool here for a moment because if you've hung around me long enough, or you saw the interview I did on the second interview I did on Stephen Bartlett, all of what I teach, whether it's in Eat Like a Girl or Fast Like a Girl, they're just a bunch of tools that go in a toolbox. And now the part that we get to do together is help you understand how to pull out which tool. So when you hit that place in your life, at some point where you're like, I saw this, my clinic was in Silicon Valley, and I saw this so much, where these moms would come in their fancy cars, and they lived in their fancy houses, and they would sit down, and they had all dripping in diamonds, and they had incredible lives. And they would sit with me and they'd be like, I'm just not happy. I don't know. And the doctor had put them on medication, and they had tried everything. And when we did this fast, happiness was rebooted. I kid you not. That's the power of what you're about to go through. And we will talk in the coming days about breaking this fast, because we want to make sure that we have held this dopamine reset really well for you. Last thing that I want to say, and we will talk about this more as the days go on. The way the dopamine system works, and should work at its best, is dopamine comes in when you get the gold medal. I'm sure the silver and bronze got a dopamine hit. But serotonin should follow. Dopamine and serotonin are besties. And dopamine says, we did it, let's do it again. And serotonin says, we did it. That was awesome. I'm going to sit in how awesome that was for a moment because I'm really proud of myself. So as we're going to talk about this more in the coming days, because you're going to use oxytocin, connection to others, to get through the fast as we reset your dopamine system. And then when we bring your dopamine system back online after the 48 hours and we lean into food, we're going to learn how to maximize serotonin. And I'm going to show you how to maximize it through food. I'm going to show you how to maximize it through behavior, so that when you bring food back in and your dopamine receptors like, yes, that was amazing. We totally didn't have food for 48 hours. I feel so high off a carrot. That carrot never tasted so good. I want you to learn how to use your serotonin system to tell its bestie, thank you very much for your service. I'm going to sit in this moment and just say, this is really good. This is really good. So in the coming days, that's where we're going in this discussion. I hope you see that we are neurochemical beings. I do not understand why, as women, we did not get this message. Well, everybody marketing to us knows this. The food industry knows this, and they're all doing their best. The social media world knows this, and they're all doing their best to manipulate our neurochemical system. And this is the week you take your neurochemical system back. And you understand and you understand these neurochemicals that are happening in you, and you have control over this system so that the environment and the culture doesn't control it for you. If you don't control it, the environment and culture will control it for you. And the food industry really wants to control it for you so much. And Netflix wants to control it for you, and Facebook and Instagram want to control it for you. I think we're live on those platforms right now. Hopefully I didn't just blow up the whole system, but we need to start with the idea that these neurochemicals run us, and that everything in the culture is manipulating it. So now is the week that together we are going to learn how to take our neurochemical system back. And when it gets difficult, we are going to lean into the queen of all hormones, oxytocin. We're going to phone a friend. We're going to go to socials. We're going to pet our dog. We're going to do everything. We're going to listen to music. We're going to dance in our kitchen. We're going to do everything we can to rely on the queen, oxytocin, to get us through these 2 days. And tomorrow when I get on, I'll give you more and more lists. So you have lots. I like a checklist. Like, okay, I called a friend. I still feel like shit. Okay, let me go hug my dog. Okay, that's helping. Okay, I mean, here's the thing about oxytocin. It only has a half-life of like 30 seconds. So we're going to need a master list. So tomorrow when we get together, I'm going to create a master list for you, and come with a pen and a paper so you can write it down. And that way you can go through this master list, and I'm locked and loaded with oxytocin. I know exactly what I need to do. And we're going to rely on the queen to guide us through this. Make sense? Anybody more excited for the 48-hour fast now? Did I take your fear and turn it into like excitement? I hope. I mean, I probably just amplified your dopamine system, but that's okay. She's going to get a little break over the next 2 days. And you could even talk to your dopamine system and be like, tonight, you could be like, thank you for your service. I'm going to give you a rest for a couple of days. And I'm going to call on oxytocin to help me through this. And tomorrow we will highlight oxytocin. So you are locked and loaded with oxytocin. The next day, we're going to highlight serotonin. So you understand how serotonin can calm dopamine down. And I promise you, this is going to be that week. You look back and you realize that your life changed. That's the power of resetting dopamine. Oxytocin to the rescue. Okay, I love you all so much. It's really I've asked Hay House to take me out of webinar mode so I could see your beautiful faces because you give me oxytocin, and I see all of you smiling, and I really appreciate it. And just keep believing in yourself. Where you get stuck is you weren't given the manual on how you work. And you are a neurochemical being, whether you're a man or a woman, you are a neurochemical being that is about to have a neurochemical reset. And for the men, and if you bring men into this, I'll bring in, we'll talk about testosterone. I promise I don't mean to leave testosterone out, because we can chat about that over the next couple of days. And dopamine and oxytocin are very similar in men and women. So I want to make sure I'm inclusive of everybody. So, okay, with that, love to you all, and go talk to dopamine and find yourself some oxytocin, and I'll be back tomorrow.